Have you ever wondered if there's a magic molecule that could revolutionise our approach to energy, solve air pollution, and dramatically cut carbon emissions? The world of green hydrogen, the clean, versatile, and game-changing energy source that's been making waves across the globe. From its humble beginnings to its current status as a critical player in the quest for sustainable energy, green hydrogen has a story that's as fascinating as it is essential. Welcome to Emerging Tech Unpacked, a podcast series about setting the record straight on emerging tech myths and profiling the career stories of incredible women leaders in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. My name is Lucy Lin, and today we'll be unpacking the fascinating topic of green hydrogen with Dr Louise Brown. Hello, Louise. Welcome.
Yeah. Hi, Lucy. Thanks for having me. It's really good to be able to talk to you today about what we're doing.
Excellent. So we've got a lot to get through because you're a very interesting person as well. So you're the CEO and the founder of Hydgene. Can you tell us how you got to where you are and also your background story too?
Yeah, sure. I think it's probably best if I start off a little bit about Hydgene and then I can tell you about the journey to date for how I got to be where I am today as the CEO of Hydgene. So what we do at Hydgene, we're a deep tech startup company. We are based in Sydney. And in the last 12 months, we've grown to about a team of 16 people. So we are venture capital backed, but we're a biotech company, very much focused on planet-saving technology. We build with biology, and we're very much building with biology for the future we want to live in. So it's about sustainable technologies where we've developed what we call a proprietary synthetic biology technology, where we in Hydgene can take biomass waste and upcycle that to produce chemicals and fuels. And the focus of the chemicals that we manufacture today is green hydrogen. So for us at Hydgene, the technology is about a zero carbon, circular global economy. We want to convert our waste streams into valuable products, and renewable hydrogen is the focus for many different industries, which we can talk about over the next, few minutes. But where I've come from, I am an academic by training. I am one of 4 founders of Hydgene. We've all come from the academic community. In particular, Macquarie University was where we all met. Between us, we have 4 PhDs. We're a collection of experts in biochemistry, molecular biology, biotechnology, synthetic biology, so have lots of probably more than 50 years experience in this field. And it was an academic research project that was the foundation for the technology that we now focus on at Hydgene. And it was from a student undergrad project where it started. Should I tell you a bit about the project and how it evolved into a company?
I always found the academic route to founder to be incredibly interesting. And, we've got 4 PhDs as founders. You've been one. So incredibly smart group of people. Is this something that you've always envisaged doing, or it's an opportunity that you saw and then you just took?
Yeah, there was never a plan behind this. I think as an academic, you always chase interesting things. Something we'd worked on over the many years with my co-founder, Professor Robert Willows, was to take microorganisms and see if we could modify them to do things that they have never done before and to do it efficiently. So this is the field of synthetic biology. And with my co-founder, Robert, we had a class that we taught to undergrad students in biomolecular sciences, where it was a finishing unit where the students were put in a large group or a project to work on a project where they were getting microbes to do something interesting, and we competed in an international competition called iGEM. Now, iGEM stands for the International Genetically Engineered Machine, and it's a global competition based in Boston where teams of undergrad students compete around the globe and present projects that are quite interesting about what microbes have done. So back in 2017, Robert and we had a team that changed or coded bacteria to make hydrogen gas. And I think we were blown away by how well it worked. We had a microbe that we captured some gas in a test tube. And I don't know if you remember your days when you could do what was called the pop test, when you bring a flame to it and then you hear that squeaky pop, and we'd made hydrogen. So it was an exciting project to take to what we call the Jamboree event, the competition where all the teams come together. The students won the top energy prize that year. There was a lot of interest. So we knew that there was something in there. And so from that, the next steps were we found a grant to apply for from the Australia's Renewable Energy Agency, or ARENA. And they were looking for research in universities to help with that transition to green hydrogen. So we were awarded one of 16 grants. It was quite a large grant at the time. This was in 2018. We were awarded about $2.8 million to be able to develop this microbial-based method for making hydrogen and to do it more efficiently. So that's when we pulled all the people together, developed the technology, started to go down that commercialisation path, and formed the company of Hydgene over the next couple of years from 2018 through to 2021 while still at the university.
Yeah, gosh, there's so many things to unpack there that you've just talked about. I love that story. First and foremost, was it hard to transition from your academic life into, finding your own company and also leading with employees? I know that now you've got a sizable team. You just moved offices into somewhere bigger. What was that journey like?
Yeah, Lucy, as I said at the beginning, I don't think that was ever part of the plan to transition from an academic career into leading a company. But it was because I really had a very traditional academic path that I was on, where you get your PhD, you postdoc overseas for several years. I was in the US for a couple of years, came back, did a fellowship at another university, got an academic position, set up a research group. So that's the traditional academic pathway. And I've worked on a lot of different protein systems or things at molecular levels over the last 15 years. So I've been at Macquarie since about 2005. And again, this was one interesting discovery, something that, just we didn't plan, where we started to see that there was likely a commercial impact of this research. But trying to find where the grant money was going to be to develop it was always going to be a challenge in a university environment. So university is focused on discovery, not necessarily commercialization, although the two are starting to become, more intertwined and universities are becoming more involved. So it wasn't the intention. We ended up over the last couple of years trying to educate ourselves as best we could in this world of commercialization. As founders, we did the CSIRO ON programs. They're still going today. They have an accelerator program where they help companies or deep tech companies develop technologies to spin out of universities or CSIRO. But they also taught us a lot of skills about customer discovery and market analysis, but really much got us out of the building. So it wasn't, again, intentional, but there was absolutely an opportunity there. We knew hydrogen is not made clean today, and I can talk further about that. We could make it clean. There was a lot of interest in what we were doing. We had the skills as a team to develop the technology. And I think that's core to make sure, you do have those smart people that know how to develop the science. But we had to learn about market opportunities. As academics, it's about the commercial impact. That's what we didn't usually do. It was so we had to learn along the way that it wasn't just about the cool science. It was about making the commercial metrics work, understanding the markets, understanding the competition. So it took a lot of learning there in new skills. Leadership style, I think I've always had the same leadership style. I like to work with, as I said, smart people. We need to be very transparent how we develop technologies, work together. But now we're finding, as you said, our company's grown quite quickly over the last 2 years. We've gone from a very small laboratory in a university environment. We're now in our second home as of last week, which is over 1,000 square meters. The team continues to grow. We're now up 16, about to employ our 17th person. So we're still learning how to grow with that scale of running a company, and learning about that journey along the way is uncomfortable. but incredibly rewarding, even though it is challenging.
Isn't it great how it is uncomfortable? But I think that's where you get the most learnings. It's like, I don't think if it was an easy ride, everyone will be doing it. But, because it's so challenging, I think it will become the most rewarding afterwards. Can you
100%.
tell us a little bit more about, like, what kind of skills do you need as a founder? You've gone through the commercialization process. You've gone through an accelerator, which is great to learn more, and then now you've got 16 employees. Tell us a little bit more about the founder journey itself. Like, have you had to raise money? What's it like, assessing your competition, etc.?
Yeah, look, I think the skills we've had to learn. You've mentioned that probably the big one is raising capital. Raising capital is hard. In the university sector, we write grants, and it's very much a solo effort. You submit your grant, nothing happens for a long time. You might get a bit of feedback, and then the lottery starts as to whether you're one of the lucky sort of 10% that does get funding. Whereas raising capital for a startup requires a lot of storytelling, and it's telling the story that is not the tech story, but the story which is more focused on the why. Why is this important? Why does it have to be done now? And why are we the right team to be able to, have that impact that we need and to hit those key commercial metrics to make this, profitable for the investors that we hope to bring on board. And I think that's taken us a long time to work on the storytelling aspect for what we do, because academics will talk about science underwater for hours. It's really trying to get clear as to the impact on a commercial level. We think we move fast, but when you get out into that commercial world, we have to make decisions a lot faster. If something is not working, you find a solution, you move on. We need to work with others that have expertise that we don't. So instead of trying to teach ourselves everything, I think we've gotten better at learning what we don't know, and we find people that do have those skills that we can then partner with or work with or learn from. So it's key for us to develop strong partnerships to help us move forward. So I think they're probably the two biggest challenges. Yeah, learning how to raise capital, tell a good story, move fast, find the right people that are aligned with our mission, and get the right talent on board, which I think we've been fortunate to do so far. We've got some super smart people in the company that share our passion for what we do.
Yeah, amazing. So good. The storytelling aspect, I think, is really important and really interesting that you mentioned that, especially when we're communicating new and emerging technologies. So let's talk a little bit more about green hydrogen. You're an expert in this. Perhaps tell us the story about, green hydrogen in very basic terms, perhaps how it's produced, and also why it's so crucial for the future.
Yeah, green hydrogen, I think it is very much a key player in that global energy landscape. It's going to help us hit those targets for decarbonisation, the short-term ones, but also those long-term 2050 targets. And even though it's a very simple molecule, it does come with its challenges. So it can be a gas or a liquid. It can be used for lots of different applications. When we use it, it doesn't create any emissions, but only emits water. So it's very clean to use. But the biggest challenge today is the way we make it, it's not clean. And it is a molecule that we actually have to make. So even though it is the most abundant molecule on the planet, we can't just capture it and use it. We actually have to produce it. So today, it's an industry that's been around for a very long time, but today the hydrogen that we use comes from fossil fuels. And that's more than 99% of the hydrogen is from fossil fuels. So it's very, very dirty to make it, even though it's clean to use. So the biggest challenge today with hydrogen is decarbonising the production, not necessarily the use of it. Those use applications are already here. Hydrogen today, the biggest market is for chemical manufacturing, for ammonia. Ammonia is used for fertilizer, for the food that we can eat. So the industry is established. It's just how we make it today needs to transition to that sort of green hydrogen future. And there's a couple of ways we can do that. So when we talk about green hydrogen, it's talking about the renewable input that we need to be able to manufacture that green hydrogen. So the renewables can be wind and solar. So we hear a lot about green electrolysis, and that's when you've got wind and solar providing those green electrons you need to run the electrolyzers to split water to make hydrogen and oxygen. So that renewable input is quite important there for making that green hydrogen. So that's one way that we can make it, and a lot of work has been done in that space. At Hydgene, we're a little different. We still use a renewable feedstock to make our hydrogen, but the renewable feedstock we use is biomass. So plant material, anything that has been living before that has captured carbon from the atmosphere, we can use that as our feedstock with our engineered organisms that we've the focus of our technology to produce the hydrogen cleanly. So same end product, still green hydrogen, low carbon footprint, or in our case, it's actually carbon negative. But it's about that renewable input process of what's feeding that. So we can do it through electrolysis with renewables, wind and solar, or you can use it through biomass.
Oh, amazing. I love that. I love how you're using plants. It's incredible. So
it's not just plants, it's anything that plants are used for today. So some of the feedstocks we use do come from the farm. So a lot of farm residues like straw stubble, but we can also use, paper. So paper that was once plant-based is very valuable. And it's because it's rich in these sugars that is our feedstock. But even things like human sewage, we've tested that with our technology, and human sewage has got a lot of plant-based material in there as well, and we can use that. So it's not necessarily things we've got to grow for this technology, but it's other once plant-based materials that have entered into the supply of paper and cardboard, wood, wood pellets, any waste wood, anything that has once been biologically grown or made is a renewable feedstock that we can use. So that's what we call biomass.
Wow, amazing. I love that. All right. Well, I've heard of lots of different types of hydrogen as well. I've heard of grey and I've heard of blue. Can you maybe tell us how green hydrogen compares to that, and also compared to the other renewable energy sources, especially when regarding to environmental impact and also sustainability that we've just spoke about too?
Yeah, so I mentioned green hydrogen, and probably less than, I think it's 0.1% of the hydrogen we have today is green. So the remainder is coming from the fossil fuel industry. And, we talk about the colors of the rainbow with hydrogen, and you hear that a lot. So when it comes from the fossil fuel industry, it can be black or brown or gray. So black is when you take coal and you use methods like steam methane reformation to extract the hydrogen or produce the hydrogen. So black hydrogen, of course, is the dirtiest of all. You're getting about 30 tons of CO2 per ton of hydrogen. It's highly polluting, and it is still done today. Then you've got the next color of the rainbow is brown hydrogen, or sometimes it's described as gray hydrogen. And that's when you've got hydrogen that is generated again from fossil fuels, but this time it's coming from natural gas or methane. So through that steam methane reforming process, you get the hydrogen. It's again a dirty process. You're getting about 10 tons of CO2 per ton of hydrogen using that method. So again, that's quite a common way for making it today. Then the next color that we transition to, and we hear a lot about it, is this blue hydrogen. So blue hydrogen is when we'll be taking that brown or gray hydrogen, but this time instead of releasing that carbon dioxide into the air, what will happen to make it blue is that will be captured. And then so you've technically got a cleaner hydrogen because that CO2 is being locked away. So there is a lot of talk about that. There is also a lot of debate about how effective and economically viable blue hydrogen will be, because there is a cost for capturing carbon. The technology is not quite proven at scale either. There's lots of challenges there. So whether it should be part of that transition to a cleaner hydrogen is still up for debate, and lots of different views out there. So we've got black, brown, grey, blue. Green then fits into the picture. And again, that's using renewables, wind or solar for electrolysis, or the Hydgene method, which is using biomass and then using a engineered microbe to make the hydrogen. But then you can have other types as well. There's also pink hydrogen. Pink hydrogen is where you use nuclear energy for driving the electrolysis process, or sometimes people even call that yellow hydrogen. There's also turquoise hydrogen, which comes from pyrolysis of methane, and it goes on. Wow. So I think the colors of the rainbow is not a helpful way to describe this industry. I think we've got to get back to talking about the carbon footprint. Do we have a technology that releases carbon dioxide to the air and is polluting? Do we have a neutral footprint for production, such as green hydrogen, or can we get it to be carbon negative, which is what we do at Hydgene?
Yeah. Wow, amazing. I've never heard of that before, all the different colors of the rainbow, but that's really fascinating. And I think green being the best one probably for the environment is the one that I'm leaning more towards too. How mature is the technology for green hydrogen production? I'm assuming it must be quite costly to produce the biomass of it. And what are the key factors probably influencing how you can scale it in the future, and also maybe cost effectiveness?
Yeah, and I'd like to again talk about sort of those two main ways to make the green hydrogen, because we have to make green hydrogen. I think personally that transition to blue hydrogen, it might be short term because we can use infrastructure, but we're aiming all for green hydrogen. And electrolysis will work for some geographical regions where you've got lots of wind and solar. And then where you've got biomass, you'll have the Hydgene technology that comes in. But again, these technologies, especially electrolysis, has been around for a very long time. I think the last, big leaps in the technology for electrolysis were back in the 1960s. So a lot of money and resources have gone into improving the efficiency of electrolysis over the last sort of 50 years. But we're still only, like I said before, making less than 0.1% of the hydrogen by green electrolysis. So you kind of have to ask yourself, well, what is really going on? And I think, Lucy, you said it's about the cost, and the economics have to be attractive. So with electrolysis, it is about trying to drive down the infrastructure costs. It's not just the electrolyzer and making them cheaper like we did with solar panels, but it's also that balance of plant infrastructure that has to be built, which we don't have today. You need to have large-scale renewables in terms of those large-scale solar farms and wind farms, and we don't even have that today for electrifying other industries. So it's whether we really have that excess of green electrons to drive that process. We're nowhere near that scale, and I can talk about some numbers about what that would look like. But it's then not only just having that capacity in those large-scale wind and solar farms, you've got to get cheap electrons out of it. So to make low-cost hydrogen that's green and is going to compete with the fossil fuel industry, you need to have green electrons going into that process that are about 3 cents a kilowatt hour. That is super, super cheap in terms of renewable power. I don't know if you've looked at your power bill lately, but mine is nowhere near 3 cents a kilowatt hour. And so the challenge is really, how do we get those cheap green electrons to make that green hydrogen where we've got lots of wind and solar? And we need to do it round the clock. So making hydrogen 24/7 is also another challenge. We can't just turn on and off these electrolyzers. There's lots of challenges. But probably I think the other big elephant in the room that is not often discussed with green hydrogen is if we make it by electrolysis at scale, we've then got to get it to the end user. So hydrogen is, like I said earlier, it's a gaseous molecule. We don't move it around today. So when the fossil fuel industry makes hydrogen, they're actually using it on site. They use it next door to make ammonia. They're using it in the oil refining process. So the supply chain today, no one moves hydrogen around, or very little of it is moved around, because it's a very difficult molecule to move because it needs to be compressed and liquefied. And the cost to do that is quite expensive. and it requires a lot of energy to do that as well. So there's challenges around not just production, but distribution of green hydrogen. And I think, what we've tried to do at Hydgene with our biomass technology is we need to very much focus on sort of the unit economics. We have to make it cheap so we can compete with the fossil fuel industry. And the way that we've done that is we look at renewable biomass that is cheap. We're not talking about glucose that is quite expensive off a shelf for feeding to our microbes to make hydrogen. We want to look at sources such as residues on the farm that don't have another market. So straw stubble is really interesting. It's one where the farmers are burning it because there is not a market today. But it's still not a free waste stream. There are costs associated with collecting it, moving it, turning it into hydrogen. So we've been able to tap into a lot of different waste streams. We've worked, or we continue to work on the engineering, the DNA engineering of our microbes to make it more efficient, turning more of that waste into hydrogen. But what we've also done at Hydgene is we've developed a technology where we can take our microbes, and I'm going to change the name of it soon into a biocatalyst. We can take that to where we actually need the hydrogen. So we want to take it to the site of where the customer is or the end user. So they can make the hydrogen where it's needed and when it's needed. So we don't have to then have complicated, expensive storage and transport infrastructure also established and used. We can just couple our output directly to whatever that end user application is. And that's how we're going to get the costs down. So there's a lot of challenges out there. The elephant in the room, no one ever talks about storage or transport.
Yeah.
If we can try and do it how the fossil fuel industry does it today, use it where it's made, I think we can start to compete with the fossil fuel industry.
Ah, fascinating. Yeah, because I've always wondered about hydrogen, as you mentioned, it's the most abundant element in the universe. And yet I've always wondered why it's not a more significant part of the energy equation, and obviously what you've just outlined is a whole list of challenges that makes it very difficult. Yeah. And around the cost, around this energy storage and around distribution.
Yeah. And I think that's what, can I add on there? There's a really good point that you've just made. Why is it not part of that energy equation today? And hydrogen, if you look at the market use today, I think globally there's nearly 100 to 130 million tons of hydrogen made today. So it's quite a big market. So it is part of, the industry today, but not for energy use. We're not using it for making electrons to turn on lights or as a fuel in cars. We actually use it as a chemical. So its big use today, I mentioned earlier, is for ammonia production. So ammonia for fertilizer for the food. And that's the Haber-Bosch process. So in our bodies, I think half the nitrogen of our bodies has come from the Haber-Bosch process, which is the fossil fuel industry's way of making hydrogen. So hydrogen its purpose is for use for chemical manufacturing. That's today. And I'm a big believer that that's the market we have to target. We need to decarbonize those chemical industries. Then I think, back to your point, then I think we can start looking at some of the challenges with the energy transition. Can we supply energy to remote areas? If they've got waste, can we have a decentralized way for producing hydrogen that we can then put into what we call a fuel cell to make electricity for energy? So that's, to me, the hydrogen of tomorrow. I absolutely believe there will be applications for doing that. But I think solar and wind is great for the energy equation. Hydrogen is good for long-term storage, but really its focus is chemical manufacturing. And I think that's where the conversation often out there is a little misleading. It's not just energy, it's a chemical.
So can you tell us a little bit more about some of the promising developments and opportunities of green hydrogen? I know there's a lot of policy changes that's coming up. Has that been a positive for the industry too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think every country globally has had a hydrogen roadmap of some sort over the last, 5 to 10 years developed. And while that has somewhat focused on the tech and a lot has gone into electrolyzer technology, what else has been very promising for this industry is the policies that are starting to be developed. I think probably the most exciting one is in the US with the Inflation Reduction Act. The IRA is, an incredibly generous financial support. I think it's going to be worth about $500 billion, where it will help with subsidies. It's going to help sort of bridge that gap between the production cost of making green hydrogen today and getting it down to those market prices we need to be able to phase out, the brown and the grey and the black green hydrogen. So that is probably the gold standard that the rest of us are looking at in Australia. Our response to the IRA is the Hydrogen Head Start package, which was announced in the budget, I think, last year. It's about a $2 billion package for, again, support for the production of green hydrogen. But this is one where it's very much focused on large-scale electrolysis projects. And I think there's other technologies there that we can roll out a lot faster and start to have an impact sooner. So it's a small wave for developing things in the right direction, but I think there's a lot more exciting technology for making green hydrogen in other ways that needs, financial support as well. Then I think, there's other policies around waste management that we hear about a lot. How can we better manage our waste so we're not just burning it or dumping it? So there are pressures on industries to change with their waste management. So industry is looking for ways to upscale or up value add to their waste streams. And we see that even in the agricultural industry, with the sugarcane industry, they're feeling the pressure now to stop burning their waste residues. Farmers in the grain sector, where we can use the straw stubble after harvest, they're starting to feel that pressure to not burn the stubble after harvest. And we've not met a farmer that wants to burn. So ag industries, they're all looking for that policy to be developed. Well, I don't know. They're looking for a solution for when that policy will come in. And this is where Hydgene really wants to position ourselves to be able to help those industries to provide a solution where they've got a waste stream. And then we're providing hydrogen, which can be used for chemical manufacturing, if that's what they do, or for energy production. So it's really about, the ecosystem, I think, has to develop really strategic partnerships to be able to get, that transition to green hydrogen to happen. There's a lot that has to be done from those that make hydrogen, those that use hydrogen, the regulatory aspects, but also the universities and the research focus. So there's a lot of key work to still be done. Key partnerships and governments absolutely play a key critical role in that. And especially also the last one I did want to mention was there's a guarantee of origin scheme where we look at hydrogen and we're going to have a way now where we should be able to say this is clean hydrogen, this is its carbon footprint. So then the market can make those decisions as to, who they want to work with a provider for hydrogen to make sure that they're also reducing their own carbon footprints. So a lot of really good focus in policy and around carbon footprints that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I just see so many opportunities. Like, I'm sure no farmer wants to burn any of that, that waste. Like, it just makes sense like why you want to change that into an energy output instead. So many positive things that I see. Has it been hard to get governments to think, or is this more of a media coverage thing or a public perception thing? Because I know that sometimes hydrogen has been associated as being dangerous. Could that be the reason why there's a bit of laggedness as well? I've heard about the Heidelberg disaster of 37, and I know that's being perceived as dangerous. So is it the media? Is it public perception? How do we get people to think that this is actually a very good thing rather than, could be a bit dangerous maybe? And that's why we're trying to debunk it, right?
Yeah, there is a lot of strong voices out in the industry. I mean, hydrogen comes from the fossil fuel industry. I think they're, keen to protect their own legacy, but keen to partake in that transition to green hydrogen. So there's a lot of focus around green electrolysis because it can be done at scale and it's the technology that most people are aware of. So you hear a lot about that out in the media. I think the media coverage, can vary in terms of quantity and quality sometimes. I welcome the growing interest in green hydrogen. I think we're hearing a lot about it. There's not a week goes by when there's something out there talking about it in a positive way from both sides of government about, the need to be able to decarbonise this industry. But I sometimes feel the coverage is not quite as deep enough to capture sort of that complexities of the technology and the supply chain. As I said before, we don't hear about the challenge for, are we going to make it? How do we then move it around? We don't have that pipeline infrastructure in place. We can't make it cheap enough. So I think there's been a lot of hype and maybe a little too much optimistic reporting going on that this is going to happen overnight as well. I think the conversation over the last decade, especially in Australia, was we'd make hydrogen to export to the rest of the world. I think that conversation is now starting to change because but the industry is realizing it's very difficult, like I said before, to move hydrogen around. So the focus, we're now starting to hear that focus will now be more on domestic production. How can we value add to our industries here by, what hydrogen we make here? Can we help the steel manufacturing industry instead of shipping out iron ore and then elsewhere, moving the hydrogen and then bringing it back? Why are we not taking advantage of our ability to make green hydrogen here and value add on products here in Australia, which are easier to transport globally? So, I think it is a complex industry. Then we've got, the safety aspect of it as well. As you mentioned, the Hindenburg disaster is something that's often associated with hydrogen. But again, hydrogen is a well-established industry. It's been around for very, very long time. The ways for handling this as a flammable gas are very well known. Like we've handled, LPG, we handle hydrogen the same. So there are safety procedures, of course, and protocols that have to be followed for it to be safely used. And that's quite well managed. But Hindenburg, is an interesting one because hydrogen, just talking about, there's a bit of a myth out there. Hydrogen burns with a clear flame. So when you look at those pictures of the Hindenburg disaster, there's lots of flame, big yellow flame. So that's not the hydrogen that is burning. It's likely the framework of that Airbus that met disaster. So, I hope to steer that conversation away from Hindenburg and more towards, yes, we know how to work with hydrogen. It's an essential commodity. We've been working with centuries. We know how to work with it safely. And it's, really a key essential part of that energy transition. We need green chemicals as well as green electrons, and hydrogen's quite versatile for meeting that.
Yeah, I just find it hilarious how an incident from, almost a century ago is still being thought of, isn't it?
Likewise. It always comes up. Yeah.
Yeah, and technology has progressed so much further than that, and science too, it's just find it hilarious how people still think about it. I think because it's such a visual image that people just go, oh, probably one of the first very visual images, and that's probably why. So in your opinion, what do you think about the future of green hydrogen? How do you think it may evolve in some of the coming years? Do you see it being globally adopted further? I'm quite interested in more developed nations or remote areas, not just like where we are in developed nations. How do you see it from a global perspective?
Yeah, look, it absolutely is essential. We have industries that rely on green hydrogen. And, as I said before, that ammonia production cannot happen without green hydrogen. So we need that for the food that we need to eat. So we need to find ways to help those industries transition. And they're the ones that we have today. So, at Hydgene Renewables, we do see that future where green hydrogen will be part of that global chemical, but also that energy landscape. And it will take part in that as a major player for producing green hydrogen when we can start to get production down the cost curve. Now, whether we need the government subsidy to do that, I think we need to develop the technology not relying on that government subsidy, because we need to be able to make sure that the economics work from a technology perspective. But whether we need that initial support, it absolutely helps the industry. So I think the subsidies have to go in the right direction. for this industry to grow. So we will see new industries develop once we decarbonise today's hydrogen production. We're then going to have industries tomorrow where we've got hydrogen for heat. We're going to have it for transport where it makes sense. So long haul trucking fleets, shipping. Hydrogen is also good. It's used for making methanol. We're hearing that the shipping industry now is looking at methanol as a fuel. We need hydrogen for aviation, for sustainable aviation fuels. Hydrogen is a key chemical for manufacturing of those fuels. So we're going to see these new applications come on board through the ability of that green hydrogen. It's unlocking new clean industries, new ways to use our renewables. So I think electrolysis will absolutely play a role where we've got lots of wind and solar, and where we've got biomass resources. Then a technology like Hydgene's, where we can use that biomass to make hydrogen on site, will allow us to unlock some of these new market opportunities. So it is exciting times. I think there's massive opportunities over the next 10, 20 years for this industry.
Yeah, amazing. That's great. How big would you say this industry is? And, you're a woman of science and technology. What would you say your experience has been so far?
Yeah, it's a very big established industry, and it's expected to grow, and depending on whose reports you believe, it could be $1 trillion industry sort of by 2030, 2040. So the scope for growth is absolutely there. You're dealing with large-scale incumbents across industry that are very much interested in the production methods, but also the use. And they're across, again, from chemicals with methanol, sustainable aviation fuels, ammonia, right through to energy production. So there are lots of hydrogen conventions and conferences, and bigger oil industry always partake in those. A very big industry. And having come from an academic background, and my background is not in hydrogen markets or the industry, it's been quite a steep learning curve to understand the history of how that industry has been established and those key interactions. But really, what are these companies looking for? They're all looking for ways to decarbonize, but they've got to do it at scale. So anyone that's developing hydrogen technology, we need to develop the technology where we can make lots of hydrogen. This is not small units that can go on the back of a farm and I can put my grass clippings into. We need to be talking about projects where we're going to be supplying 10 tons or more of hydrogen per day. And that's the scale of what we have to work with. That's what we are aiming towards with Hydgene. This is manufacturing of a key commodity at large scale for supplying, very key, chemical industries and sectors such as fuels and methanol and all the others I mentioned.
Wow, $1 trillion in 6 years' time. That's it's going really quickly. So you didn't come from hydrogen. Can you tell us what you studied perhaps? And then maybe how could you get into this industry? How can more people get into green hydrogen or renewable energies? And I'd love to hear more about potentially even more girls and women getting into STEM as well.
So I have a PhD in biophysics. So that's very much looking at biological systems and understanding how they work from a physical angle. I see myself as a problem solver. Again, I think some of what we do in Hydgene is very much, here's the problem, what's the solution? So it's not quite, a little different, but again, it's really, where are we aiming for? What tools do we have today to be able to get there? What's the most efficient way of being able to solve this problem, whether it's a scientific problem or a market problem? So I think anyone with a PhD, it's not what you've actually been trained in formally. It's actually that skill set of being able to solve problems and be strategic about, new ways of doing it. So that's how I view my education. I absolutely love physics. I have since I was little. I'm always intrigued by all aspects of science, from space right through to microbes. So yeah, I'm easily distracted by all aspects of science, but at my core, I am a problem solver and I want to have impact. And I think, did I think I'd end up in this field of renewable energy? Possibly not, but I think the more time has gone on, I mean, we're all impacted by climate. It's very much out our window today, maybe not 10, 20 years ago, but, we're feeling that change. It's not a battle we're having to have as to convince people that, change has to happen. So translating, my skill set into this field was not a difficult thing. Yes, Lucy, I think you pointed out I am a female. I don't think I've ever been conscious of that, really. It's just, I'm a scientist and I like to solve problems. And even in our company, with the females, we have 3 females in key executive positions in our company. It's natural to us. It's what women do very well. We have not struggled with sort of this debate of how do we bring in more women. We have smart women in our company. But I think, as I've gone on, I've become more conscious of my company is not necessarily
Mm.
reflective of other companies out there in their ecosystem. I see lots of reports about funding and investment not being directed towards women leading companies. We need more women in leadership roles. We need to find ways to address that. So it's a difficult question for finding, that when I said I'm a problem solver, I haven't worked out how to solve that problem yet. I think it's, inspiring women, finding those mentors. And I have my own female mentors that I look up to and admire in this industry who I think have done an amazing job and are leaders in this industry. So we need strong leaders. We need to find those mentors that can help. It's so important for women to inspire other women. And I think, workplaces have to be inclusive. They have to be supportive. I don't think, having key metrics is often the way to go. It's really trying to bring in, that skill set and often, it's intrinsic to how women operate. So I don't think we've been conscious that we're trying to be a strong voice for the female community. I welcome it. If there are females out there that want to engage with our company and see what we do, please reach out. But I don't have the answer. I don't know. I don't think it's an educational piece. I think it is calling it out. It is getting numbers in reports, but I'm not sure what the answer is myself for change. And as I go further through the industry, I become more frustrated.
Yeah, I think you're incredible. I mean, what they say, 2 to 4% of females get funding as a startup founder, and and you're a very few percentage of that number. So, Louise, I think first and foremost, you should be very proud of yourself to get funding. I know you're going for a second round as well, so hopefully you can get more. But it's very tough, and I think talking about it is definitely one way of doing that. Like having someone to look up to, like yourself, from an academic to a founder, very tough road, incredible skills that you have picked up, and then to be able to raise money and to have an incredible solution in business. I think this is all very inspiring stuff. So I think more things like this, the more things we talk about as well. Like that's the reason why I have this podcast, is so we can educate more people so they can be inspired to, see more Louises, women in STEM. So I think it's fantastic what you're doing, and such an incredible invention and business that you have as well. So it's a really commendable space. I do think that this is something that's incredibly important and something that a lot of people are interested in, because renewable energy is such a hot topic. And I just think that it's fantastic that you're going ahead, and you're getting a larger office, so things are definitely going right. You're hiring more people, so this is all going upwards. What would you give to people who are interested in pursuing this field? A lot of people do want to get into the renewable energy space, the climate change space, the green hydrogen space. Do you have any great resources that you think, apart from yourself, of course, that they should be listening to or watching as well?
Yeah, sure. No, well, thank you, Lucy, because things like what you're doing here is really important for allowing us to get also our voice and our views out as well. So I want to put it back on you and say thank you. But I think other things that you can do if you want to get into that space, I think first you've got to embrace that the renewable sector, you need that interdisciplinary knowledge. It's not just about engineering science. There's policy, economics, environmental studies. Everybody can play a role. So it doesn't matter where you've come from. There is a need for smart, driven people to be involved in this sector. So it's trying to keep up to date with, what is happening with the trends and the technological advancements, because it is evolving very quickly. So it is trying to reach out and get that practical experience, whether it's networking events. We met at Climate Salad. It's an amazing community in Australia of people focused on solving climate problems. There's scientists, there are companies, there's investors, podcast contributors, and that is one amazing community to get started in. And I strongly, recommend becoming involved in some of their events. But you can also do other practical things like internships if you're a student, volunteering, on projects, join some of these other key network bodies, but also listen to podcasts. There's so many great renewable energy podcasts out there, webinars, and if you're in a university, you've got science, go and do an accelerator. Yeah, I think there's a lot more ways to be able to get into this industry now than I think there were when I first started my career.
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there if we want to go out and go find it. Obviously, there's a lot of misconceptions and not so great things out there as well, which is why I'm making sure that we are, having truths in everything that we're doing here. And so we're unpacking all this emerging tech. Is there any names that you can think of top of your head that you go, oh yeah, we have to follow that person, or go look up this website?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. It's trying to get both voices of the debate as to, what is happening in this hydrogen space, because there is a bit of hype out there, and there's a lot of truths from those that have worked in the industry. So probably the key people I listen to, and sometimes they're put in that category of being skeptics about this hydrogen industry, but they're coming from it from a very deep understanding of the field. And there's a person called Michael Liebrich. He's the founder of Bloomberg New Energy Finance, very well respected for his insights into the energy sector and green hydrogen. He has this green hydrogen ladder where he sees, well, this is where green hydrogen will unlock this industry. It's going to be most successful, and we should try other renewables for other industries. And he's got a great podcast, which I highly recommend, called Cleaning Up. So it goes into deep dives with other leaders across the technology sector. I also listen to, there's an engineer from Canada, a chemical engineer called Paul Martin. He likes to speak the truths about a lot of the scientific challenges or industrial challenges out there for really, transitioning to hydrogen and syngas. He'll call out a lot of the hype that you hear out there. So anything that he ever writes, I find quite insightful. And one of my favorite, leaders that I listen to on another podcast, the podcast is called Everything About Hydrogen. There are tech leaders there, one called Alicia Eastman. She's an amazing woman who's a president of the Intercontinental Energy Group, very well respected for developing large-scale renewable projects, really good insight into where the hydrogen economy is heading, and she's very visionary. So they're probably the three key ones that, I very much respect, their views on where the hydrogen industry is at.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, well, we're going to have all these names in the show notes, and you can follow that. Yeah, I mean, this is a fast-growing industry, isn't it? So it's great to hear some names besides yourself that we can also continue to listen to and to follow to learn more. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time, Louise, today. I think you've given us a great insight into what green hydrogen and renewable energies is as well, and I really love your story from an academic to a startup founder and pioneering woman who's, raising capital right now and continuously growing her company. And I think it's really admirable, very inspirational. And I just think it's a fantastic story, and very good luck to you Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lucy.
I loved her purpose of building a company focused on planet-saving technology and using cleaner energy sources. She's also a very inspirational role model, pivoting from a science academic to biotech startup founder and raising millions of dollars in capital. Don't we all aspire to be more like Louise? And what do you think about green hydrogen? Are you excited about this type of renewable energy? I'd love to hear more about it in the comment section. For more information about the latest episodes, to learn more about each technology and how you can contact us for sponsorship, promotion, or guest speaking collaborations, visit our website, emergingtechunpacked.com. Make sure to subscribe, like, and follow us on our social media channels to stay updated with the latest news. You can find me on LinkedIn searching for Lucy Lin. We welcome all feedback and will be very grateful if you can help us grow and spread the word by following this episode to a friend, giving us a 5-star review. Thank you for your attention. I hope I've unpacked green hydrogen for you to gain a better overall understanding of this new, incredible emerging technology. See you in the next Emerging Tech Unpacked episode soon.